Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks. On this week's show, a lot to go over in headlines as we're going to talk about The Ultimate Fighter, my experience at Bellator 124, Dave's experience at Hoosier Fight Club number 21. We also have a host of events to cover. RFA this past weekend, so was World Series of Fighting 13. We also recap Bellator 124, preview Bellator 125, recap UFC Fight Night 51, and pick the main card fights for UFC Fight Night 52. Once again, I'm your host, Jim Graham. Alongside me is the Juice, Dave Sadler. And how's it going, Dave?
Terrific. We don't have time for small talk, Jim. Got to get to it.
That's right. All right, let's start off first here. Hoosier Fight Club 21, that was in Valparaiso, Indiana?
Of course.
Okay, I thought so. All right, home to the Valparaiso Knights, the college basketball team, if you weren't aware. All right, anyways, what happened at HFC 21 for those people that weren't following her in Facebook and all that good stuff?
We got a live show alert again. My wife has come into the office to let me know that the Beyond the Cage mascot, here, pick that thing up. Here comes the Beyond the Cage mascot. This thing is amazing. Look at this. This is Bella. Hello. Say hello, Bella. Hello, Beyond the Cage listeners. All right, go.
For those of you listening to the audio version, that was Dave's dog.
But I'm sorry, that's not actually my dog. That's my wife's dog.
Oh, okay.
Not
okay,
manly
I
enough
gotcha.
for me. Anyway, HFC 21, once again, very good show. Had everything. Had some amateurs, had some pros. The amateurs started out. We had a knockout in like 21 seconds, then a submission in 49 seconds, to which I thought, this cannot be good, because now we're going to see like 48 decisions in a row. But that did not happen. The finishes kept coming, and it was a pretty good night. Kevin Novacek, who had the opportunity to fight into the house, he bloodied up a young man, cut the back of his head open. It was pretty nice, blood everywhere. Jim, do you remember the name Chris Curtis?
It sounds familiar, but I can't picture a particular fighter or fight or anything, but the name does sound familiar.
Now, this guy, I'm turning my head because I'm looking up. I want to double-check something. He fought Bilal Muhammad, who is a very young up-and-comer, fought at Bellator when they were here in Hammond, Indiana, and that kid is very talented. This Chris Curtis guy, as the event was happening, I did a little research on him. He's 10-4 currently. Listen to some of these people that he's fought and beat. Here we go. He beat Noshan Burrell in 2010. He fought Tom Galicchio. That's a Bellator fighter, correct?
Oh, that's the MFC. Lightweight champion now, I think, right?
Right. He lost to him. He lost to Forrest Petz. He beat Ron Kessler. And it was just like, if you look at some of the guys that he's beat guys who've gone on to the next level, and he just can't seem to get over that hump. But I was just impressed at the number of guys that have moved on that he's fought. But it was a pretty good fight that he had. His problem is he's a very good striker. Looked like he had good Muay Thai, but Bilal is a great wrestler, and it just seems like Curtis really hasn't evolved his game. But yeah, HFC, you gotta check the event out. The names on the card might not always be huge names, but what Paul and Danielle Vale do with the matchmaking is amazing. It's as hard as it is with amateurs. They got amateurs coming from Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, all over, and they always match them up. You never go into a fight and you're like, that guy is going to destroy that guy. And I've probably been to 11 of their shows, and that's never been the case. And side note, MMA Team Genesis fighter, Zach Klinowski, first MMA Team Genesis member to fight at Hoosier Fight Club, was victorious in the very first round via triangle at 126. So good job to Zach and Doug over there at MMA Team Genesis.
Awesome. Good news to hear, and glad you had a good time over in Valparaiso. Now, we won't talk about the fight just yet, but just my experience, because people have kind of been calling this new season of Bellator like Bellator 2.0, since it's kind of the first season under Scott Coker. And I've been to, I believe, four, maybe five. I think it's four. This was my fifth Bellator event, so I've been to quite a few Bellator events. I've gotten kind of how they run things, and this was my first time as a fan experience. My other times were as a media member, but this time I decided to go just as a fan because I could take surface streets to where CompuWare Arena was in Plymouth, Michigan. I think it took me 15 minutes to get there, and looking over the setup and everything, it was pretty similar. One thing that kind of sucked, where I was sitting, they had one of their projection boards, Dave, that they put kind of like in the corners of the arena, was above like my corner section, which it wasn't quite blocking my view, but it seemed kind of unnecessary because everyone where we were sitting was like towards the back. The cage would have been like directly in front of us, and everyone that was watching the event would have been looking towards the cage. They wouldn't have been looking behind me way above in the corner at the projection screen because there's two in the opposite corner of the screen. They should have just had one kind of in the middle behind the cage, so the fans, the little fan section that they did have, because that was mainly where the fighter entry was on the opposite side where the cage was set up, that should have been the only projector, but I digress. For Bellator coming to the Metro Detroit area for the first time, not coming to Michigan for the first time, I would say the crowd was probably about 75% full at max capacity. Believe it or not, quite a few people left once their local friend fought. They then left, which I thought was very interesting. Bellator hasn't not just Bellator, a big organization hasn't come to the Metro Detroit area in a very long time. So if you're a fan of fights, I don't know why you would leave just after your guy left, especially if he was like the third fight in the card. You saw some of that. The arena's great. It's a nice little arena. I think it's a perfect venue for Bellator to come into Michigan. Obviously, the UFC would easily, I think, sell that venue out. Could probably do a little bigger venue if they wanted to. And I thought the experience was cool. One thing, and this is something that we've talked about with Invicta, Dave, it would be cool if Bellator did those sign-by cards. They don't have to sell them for a lot of money, but to me it's something they can easily do. They already print up a whole bunch of event posters anyway. You tell me they can't have a couple of their fighters, even if it's just the main guys on the main card, the spike card, not even the amateur cards. That's an extra $50 you can make or whatever, and that would have been cool to get. But I did get for free, I don't have it next to me, but I did get a free signed poster from the Ring Card Girls. They were out for about 20 minutes before the first fight started, so I did get a dual auto photo from them. So that was cool.
Yeah, Bellator and RFA and Invicta and all those posters would be, I think those could be collectible, Jim, because wasn't your friend from high school, Shamir, wasn't he on the card?
Yep, he fought on that card, and then obviously we'll mention our good friend Jason Fisher, who we got to interview for the show. He was victorious unfortunately Shamir suffered his first career loss, but yeah, that would have been a cool keepsake, especially for, like you said, someone Shamir hasn't fought on that high a level yet.
Right, but I'm saying, getting some guys before they're a big deal. Like, you've seen that poster I have where it's an old WEC poster, and it's Henan Baral's first fight when he was the first fight on the undercard. And it's kind of cool that when he signed that poster back then, he was just he was just a nobody, and now he's sort of somebody. But yeah, it would be kind of like having a minor league card of a baseball player. One Bellator question I had: did they run it similar to what they've done in the past, where there was an undercard, and then when it went live on TV, they put the main fights on, and then there were fights after TV went off the air?
Yes, unfortunately there were fights, and that was Shamir's fight. Speaking of Shamir Garcia, my friend, his fight was supposed to be like the second or third fight of the night. I have the poster over here. I think it was second fight of the night, and somehow it got bumped, and they put it as one of the two fights after the main event. But by that time, me and my friends were pretty tired. We had been there for about a little over 4 hours, and so unfortunately I didn't get to see Shamir's fight. He lost, but I don't like that because the main event's over. That should be the final fight. It should be, oh, now we got 2 more fights that we're not going to televise. We're not really even publicizing that much. I just don't get that. Tack them in on the front or something. I mean, I don't know. So that kind of irked me a little bit.
Yeah, that's one thing that's kind of drove me nuts about Bellator. And for those that don't know, when you go to a show, because of the time constraints for Bellator on Spike or when they were on MTV2, they'll do like 3 or 4 fights that start at like 6 o'clock, and then they'll put what you see on TV as the main card. That will happen, and then they do 2 fights that usually don't get shown anywhere after the fact. And the thing that irritates me about that is, Jim, if you were training and you made it to Bellator, let's say we got all these sponsors, Fight Chicks, all these sponsors sponsoring you, thinking that you were going to be on the undercard on Spike.com, and then you get flushed around and you're way after the fact. I mean, first of all, this is your big break. You're in Bellator, all that, and then you don't know when you're fighting. That's got to be like you weren't nervous enough, and now you don't know when you're fighting. That's crazy.
Yeah, because, I mean, I think I remember talking with Darren and Jason before the fight, seeing if I could possibly meet up with them, and they're like, yeah, we have to get to the arena, at 5 o'clock, which would be about 2 hours before the event starts. So if you're my buddy Shamir Garcia, you got there at 5 o'clock thinking that you're probably going to fight like 7:15, 7:30, and then next thing you know, you're not fighting till 11:30, so that means you're waiting around in the locker room for 4 hours. You know what I mean? And then like you said, not only the sponsor thing, like I said, it was at max capacity, maybe 75% full. By the time that main event ends, how many people do you think were left? You look at a percentage left. What, 15, 20% maybe?
Yeah. Me as a media member, I enjoy it when everybody leaves because it makes the getting out of the parking garage a little easier. But
yeah, luckily, because we got there, there's like a restaurant attached to this arena that's like, you can go there during the day, like normal business hours. So we got there early. We ate dinner at the restaurant attached there, and we got like great parking. So we're able to like get out right away into the car and then get out because our parking was right up front.
Nice.
So that was nice. So good experience. I hope Bellator comes back, and I think for the fact that, people say, oh, 75% isn't that good, but if you look at the card they brought to CompuWare Arena, I think that's actually a really good attendance. So I think if they come back with, a little bigger, card, a little better card, I think that arena could easily have been sold out.
Jim, have you ever heard of Mulvane, Kansas?
No, I have not.
Bellator 130 is going to emanate from there in October.
Probably a casino, right?
No, an arena.
Well, that's probably the card David Rickles is on, right? Because isn't he from Kansas?
Yeah.
So maybe they're just doing it for Rickles because he sells a whole bunch of tickets. So, yeah. Anyways, let's get on here. Headlines. Let's talk about Ultimate Fighter 20. Let's first talk about the episode as it was. 2-hour premiere episode, which is kind of rare considering we already knew who the cast members were. There was no fight to get into the house or anything, so a little odd to see a 2-hour premiere for what amounted to just one fight. Pretty much standard stuff we've been seeing, Dave, since the Ultimate Fighter moved from Spike TV or FX even, I guess, since the UFC started doing stuff with Fox, more or less. The same type of production. I thought it was great. One thing interesting, we kind of talked about this last week, they're really taking the emphasis out of Melendez versus Pettis. They're very much building this up as crowning versus the champion. And if you look at the official TUF gear, a lot of the different colors, basically Pettis has like a teal and yellow jersey, and Melendez has a purple and yellow jersey. None of those jerseys say Team Melendez or Team Pettis. So they're really emphasizing a fight for the championship. I think the coaches, theirs might have said Team Pettis, but the ones the actual fighters wear, it didn't say anything on the back like it normally does. Like if you look at last season, it clearly said Team Edgar, Team Penn. So
that's a observation, Jim.
Yeah, I was just knowing that because I was really disappointed because I really wanted a jersey that said Team Pettis because I'm a fan of Anthony Pettis. So I may have to do some search around to get that. Anyways, one thing that was interesting that they didn't tell us about, that this wasn't going to be 16 girls getting picked, and then it was going to be like a normal season, like coaches just picking matchups kind of back and forth and whatnot. What ended up taking place is that the UFC has went ahead and seeded every girl in this contest 1 through 16. And when they did you either get the first fight or the first fighter thing, when you pick a fighter, whatever seed she is, the other team automatically gets her opponent. So, for instance, if you pick the number 1 seed, the other team would get the number 16 seed, which I thought was very interesting. And looking at the seedings, Dave, I don't think the rankings really were that far off. You had Carla Esparza number 1 because, I mean, she was the Invicta strawweight champion. Angela Hill, I think, only had like 1 professional fight, so it makes sense she was number 16. And then you had Joanne Calderwood. I thought a little surprising at number 2. She's just 4-0. Emily Kagan, number 15. Everyone can probably see the list. Tisha Torres was number 3. Felice Herrig, number 6. Rose Namajunas, number 7. You had Jessica Penn at number 4, which I thought was interesting considering she's never even fought in this weight class, or at least hasn't fought in a long time because she fought at 105. So, some interesting things, but most of it not, too surprising. You got a lot of the more experienced girls ranked higher, and a lot of the less experienced girls ranked lower. It kind of makes sense there. I thought that was interesting that they were going to do a bracket style. To me, that wasn't even announced beforehand. I don't know if they wanted to keep that a surprise or whatnot, but I think that completely changes the tone and direction of the show, the normal. I think it would have been cool to kind of had a heads up on that. But anyway, so they picked the teams, and I think Pettis did a better job of picking because, I mean, he got the number 1 and number 2 seed on his team. That means Melendez had to take the number 15 and number 16 seeded fighter. I thought right there, regardless of what the other picks were, Dave, that Pettis did a better job just based on seeding, that he had definitely more tools for his team to have a winner come out.
Yeah. It's funny when you listen to the coaches because it's taped. That this has been a while. Who cares if Team Pettis win? Like, who cares which team wins? Because after this round, it's not really going to matter. I think Pettis might get a Harley or something if whatever team wins. I think Pettis has the better team, but some of these are unknowns, like the Rhonda Marcos. I didn't know a whole lot about her, but she showed what she's about. I loved the way that they picked the fighters. I thought that was a nice little change up. The one thing that I've been questioning, Gilbert picked Heather Clark, and she was ranked 11, which put Felice Herrig at number 6 on Team Pettis. Do you think those should be reversed, or do you think Felice is too high, or what?
No, I think that's a solid ranking, and for Felice, because she even after the Tisha Torres, I think her experience really has helped her, and that's probably why she was ranked a little higher. And also, she did beat Heather Clark already, so it'd be kind of hard to put Heather Clark ahead of Felice Herrig. Maybe 6, you could say 6 is a tad high, but I think Felice Herrig is in the top. There's 16 girls, she's in the top 8.
Right. The only thing I don't mind any of the picks. The only thing is that there's beef between those two, and that they match them up. I think that
could have been planned regardless of seeding.
Yeah.
To have those two fight each other.
Yeah, they come down to like the last 4. They got like 6, 11, 7, and 10, and they're like, oh, Felice against Rose? We don't want to do that. How about Felice and Heather? Oh, that's a good... Heather, you're now the 11th ranked fighter on the show. Right.
Now, again, the teams don't matter. They did this rankings thing. It's essentially a tournament. And once again, it begs the question, why did they even have these 2 coaches in here? With this tournament format and the seeding more so than a conventional Ultimate Fighter, Dave, I would have liked to see maybe not every episode, but maybe, well, they shoot 6 weeks. So I guess for their standpoint, they could have a different set of coaches every week, just 6 coaches or 6 fighters, however you want to look at it. And it could just be one coach that kind of trains with both teams during the sessions or something like that. Kind of like what they did for the Ultimate Fighter comeback season.
Right.
all the way season 4. Fans remember that. I would have liked to seen that more, since they're really, like I said, it doesn't say Team Pettis on the jersey. It doesn't say Team Melendez. And you add in another reason, just because Pettis hasn't fought in so long, I really would have liked to seen him take Melendez a lot earlier, because it's really put this division on hold because of this whole nonsense. That's 2 reasons about it. And I'm sure, again, the UFC says, hey, you're going to go to Ultimate Fighter. There's probably not much you can do, because it looks like they wanted to do that whole thing all along. But just little things like that. I don't know if it would make the season better or worse. I'm just saying it maybe makes it a little more intriguing to know this week who's going to be the guest coach.
Right.
I don't know. But I'll get your comments, Dave, and then we'll transition. Speaking of what makes a better season, we'll transition to the TV ratings for this as well. I just want to give people kind of where we were going with this.
No, go ahead, because that my question was on the ratings. So go ahead.
Well, I guess we'll get to real quick. The fight for the show was Tecia Torres against Ronda Marcos. As you mentioned, Ronda Marcos won. She was the number 14 seed against Tecia Torres, the number 3 seed. Now, Marcos trains right here near me in Windsor, Canada, in Ontario, just over the bridge from me here in Detroit. And I actually found out via Facebook, Dave, that she was set to go to Michigan Top Team, where Jason Fisher and Darren Cruikshank trained, but then she got called on the Ultimate Fighter. So I don't know if she's still going to come over here to Michigan Top Team or what, but she had, I thought, a great performance against, again, she was the number 3 seed, but a lot of people, I think including you, Dave, had Tecia Torres winning this competition, becoming the first ever UFC strawweight champion. And for Marcos, a girl 4-1, like I said, from a really small camp in Windsor, Ontario, she just put it all on the line. You could tell her striking is not at the level of a Tecia Torres, but she had heart, will, just that desire to leave everything out there. I mean, she tried as hard as she could to get that victory, and I think she deserved it at the end of the night. And that's not to take anything away from Tecia Torres, but she probably was not expecting that type of performance from Ronda Marcos, and she probably wouldn't admit that she overlooked her, but I think in a sense she might have.
Yeah, definitely. It's good for the under. It's always good for the underdog, and that started off the season. How cool is that? It kind of shows that anything can happen. The one thing that'll be interesting to see over the next 10 weeks that they show is how Tecia Torres responds, because I've said this 1,000 times. All 16 of these girls, plus I believe 3 more that aren't on the show. She can't coast the rest of the way. She's in the UFC. She is part of the strawweight division. So it'll be interesting to see if Ticia's completely bummed out, doesn't listen to Melendez and the team, and doesn't help the other girls. But I mean, it's kind of interesting, because if you think about it, Tecia Torres is a member of Team Melendez, but does she want to help Rose win the belt, even though she's going to fight in that same division and she wants to get what Rose has? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, she should be a good teammate and help, but in the end, Tecia wants what all these girls have a chance to get. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, not only with Tecia, but with all the girls who end up losing.
Right, and I think for Tecia, since she had the first fight on this season, there's a very real chance that someone gets hurt from her team or this competition, and she's inserted back into this tournament.
Very
How
true.
many times in Ultimate Fighter we've seen guys or gals get hurt and have them come back? So that's a very real possibility. So if you're Tecia Torres, sure, it's disappointing you lost. As of right now, at least from the show, you're not going to become the UFC strawweight champion. You may at some point in time in the future, you're just not going to become the first one. So you kind of got to train as hard as you can, take as much as you can from the experience. I mean, she already has a great team at American Top Team.
Oh, yeah.
That's not to say that Melendez and his team can't offer her any wisdom, because once again, even though this wasn't an official fight on her record, this is only her 5th professional fight if you really look at it. She's still very young in the game. She's like 23 years old. So there's still a lot that she can learn, and obviously, you could take that away from her performance. So Tecia Torres will be back in Shielder as long as the UFC has this division. That's what I think. So,
yep.
we'll see what happens there. But let's get to the TV ratings. I don't know if it's the lowest ever, but in recent memory, Dave, I got this article from Cage Potato. The Ultimate Fighter debuted to its lowest numbers, definitely since it's been on the Fox networks, with an average rating of 536,000, which is about 500,000, which is not good. Ideally, you'd like it somewhere over 1 million, and typically has been somewhere in that 800,000 to 1.2 million average viewer ratings. Now, two things actually, why this may have been low. One, it was a 2-hour episode with just one fight. That might have turned some people off. You know, they might have saw, there's no fights. They might have just turned it off right away. Two, this is the first time, I don't know if it's ever been this way, but the first time I can remember where there was not a fight leading into the Ultimate Fighter. And I think that's the biggest reason why this was so poorly watched. There wasn't a huge lead-in. It was just simply regular Fox Sports 1 programming. Had the Arlovski Bigfoot Silva fight, which should have been the Fight Night Wednesday, they should have shown on Fox Sports 1, led into the Ultimate Fighter, I bet a lot of people would have stayed around and watched, because they would have been building it up as the fight was going along. You know, you see, or we'll get to it in a second, but Arlovski knocks out Bigfoot, and then they'll be like, Ultimate Fighter's coming next, and you're like, well, maybe I'll stick around and check it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest reason why ratings were not good. There was no good lead-in for it, regardless of how much press the show did. When people were tuning in, you know, they weren't. It was just kind of like a cold opening, so to speak.
I think the fight had a little less to do with it. I think the fact that it was 2 hours of talking, or an hour and 40 minutes of talking and 15 minutes of fighting, I think that had a lot more to do with it. I think the better judge would be tonight's episode, knowing that it's just an hour, there's a fight. One quick thing, did you notice Ray Flores twice on that episode?
Yes, I did. You clearly heard him when they were showing the clips announcing some of these girls. It was pretty cool.
He was in Vegas for the Mayweather-Maidana, I think, whoever it is. And I'm like, dude, you were on The Ultimate Fighter. And he's like, what? He's like, I'm in Vegas. I don't have cable. He's like, so he made me sit in front of my TV, and I had to record it and then send him a text message. He was like, dude, that's cool. No, here's what I don't understand about the ratings, Jim. I don't watch the show live. I DVR it. So am I one of the 500,000 viewers?
In I think the Cage Potato article just talks about the live numbers. I think what they call the 7-day numbers or the DVR numbers, I don't think those factor in to it, because there are probably some people that still haven't even watched that episode yet on their DVR.
Right.
So I don't think that's part of it. But those are numbers that they factor in all at the end of the season. But in terms of just watching the 2-hour live broadcast, I think that's all that this number equates in. I think we gotta. I'm sure the Fox people and stuff, they get those numbers, but I don't know if they really publish like I said, the day 7 numbers, like the replays, and I don't know if they really publicize those as much.
Right. And here's what I don't understand. You can read to me that the numbers were low and all that kind of stuff, and I guess I can go with that. I don't have any way to dispute that, but I work 3 to 11 every Wednesday, never have a Wednesday off, and I get the Twitter notifications anytime somebody tweets something right on my phone, and I try not to read them. I had a crap ton on Wednesday, and then after the episode, I went back and I kind of went through, hashtag TUF, hashtag TUF 20 or whatever I typed in, and somehow people are watching it because everybody was talking about it on Twitter. So I'm not saying those numbers are wrong, but I mean people are watching TUF 20 because there were a lot of educated folks talking about it on Twitter, my friend.
Well, Let's get to RFA 18 real quick. That was this past weekend in Albuquerque. Main card was on Access TV. Of course, I got to interview Matt Manzanares before the fight, as he was attempting to become the first ever person to defend the RFA flyweight title. And unfortunately, Dave, he was submitted in the second round by Alexandre Pentaggio. And looking at this fight, Manzanares, I think, was winning this fight. He definitely was the better stand-up fighter in the two. It just got to a point where kind of was coming in. Pantoja was able to catch him, get it to the ground, and not in a quite scramble, but excuse me, very quick, was able to get around, get the back, and get a rear naked choke in. And he didn't tap. Referee had to come in and stop this one. He passed out. Tough guy, Mr. Manzanares. But this is a fight where, you know, he's got, not to say submissions, you know, he's got to work on the submissions a little bit, but you know, he shouldn't hold his head too far down, because he had a good performance. You know, he just you know, one little slip up there and, you know, lost. And he will definitely be back. I'm sure he'll probably be in the RFA again, but I still think he's a very talented individual. And like I said, was winning that fight up until the finish there.
How did you pass me your cough through the computer? That's cool.
I don't know. Science, magic. I don't know.
Women's history. No. Yeah, absolutely. Matt's a good guy. Like you said, he was winning on the feet, and hey, you get caught. Much like the Ultimate Fighter tells me when I play the video game, hey, that was a great fight. Sometimes you just get caught, and I think that's what happened. I think Matt will be back. The way it's been going, most of the people who win the flyweight title have been leaving, except for Matt. So he could be in a flyweight title shot in a very near time.
All right, let's look at World Series of Fighting 13. Our good friend Cody Bollinger took this fight on 2 weeks' notice. Had to make it a catchweight bout. I think they said 140 pounds or 143. I'm not sure what the exact catchweight was, to get a crack at Marlon Moraes. And we already know Cody said that he was thinking about returning to the featherweight division, but you know, a chance to fight Marlon Moraes, I think something he's been wanting to do. I think he couldn't pass that up. So he took the fight on short notice, and I think that you could tell it wasn't that Cody was unprepared. I just think on short notice, maybe not, you know, the greatest time to prepare. You add in a weight cut. I just don't think he was ready for the speed of Marlon Moraes. I think that was very apparent in this fight, and I think that just the speed of his combinations and kicks, I think, were maybe a little faster than maybe Cody thought, and he was able to get in there, land some powerful shots, and get a finish in the second round. And I think if Cody has a full fight camp, he can truly use his size, you know, maybe try to grind on Moraes. I think it's a little different fight there. But once again, Moraes, very impressive.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I definitely wouldn't mind seeing the fight on a full camp. That Cody's a fighter. He's gonna step in. He was gonna take that fight on 2 weeks' notice, no matter what the weight class was. You know, you get in there. There's a reason that Moraes is ranked where he's at. And there's, you know, Cody wanted to go in there, test himself. And like I said, I would much rather see that fight on a full camp for Cody. I think that, I don't know if the result would be any different, but the fight would be a much better contested fight, in my opinion. And Cody will be back. He helped out the World Series of Fighting. They're going to take care of him, I'm sure.
All right, well, those were the other events this past weekend. And before we get into, I guess, Bellator recap and Bellator preview, of course, let's mention our friends at VigilanteMMA.com. You can follow them on Twitter at VigilanteMMA. And, of course, our friends at MMAinsider.net. Follow them on Twitter at MMAinsiderNet. All right, let's get to Bellator, first 124 and then 125. Of course, as I mentioned already, I was there live and in person for this one. And looking at this main card, Dave, Ryan Couture, the son of Randy Couture, he was originally supposed to take on Josh Scholes, a guy from Michigan, and something happened to Mr. Scholes. I'm not sure what, but he had to pull out of this fight, and they had a guy from, I have a lot of friends in this city, Redford, Michigan, which is borders Detroit, so just about just outside of Detroit. He had to come in on short notice to fight Ryan Couture on a Bellator card. Something he first of all, he's never fought anyone that good, never fought anyone on the level of Bellator with the lights and stuff, and he was kind of getting thrown to the wolves. I give him credit for getting up there and stepping up there and taking on Ryan Couture, but once you saw it wasn't the original matchup, you kind of knew, like, this is probably going to end very quickly, and it did with Ryan Couture using his great submission skills and getting a first-round submission. So for Ryan Couture's Bellator debut, yeah, he got the finish. He beat somebody he was supposed to beat, but it really doesn't show whether or not he's competing with Will Brooks and the Michael Chandlers of the world.
When Ryan Couture won, did Randy Couture break into a ballroom dance right there around the cage?
Not that I saw. He definitely was there popping in and out throughout the evening, but no, I did not see the Ben Rothwell Irish jig in the cage there.
No, didn't you know Randy was on?
Yes, I know.
My wife, I came home from work and my wife's like, "You gotta watch Randy," and I was like, "Jim, did you watch it?"
No, I'm sure. I'll have to ask. My mom is an avid Dancing with the Stars fan,
Jim,
so I'm sure she has watched it, and will let me know.
This is a live show bonus. You can't see me.
No, we can.
Okay. He was dancing, and he was doing like the la-da-da-da. Randy Couture went like this. He did that twice. No. And I was like, turn it off. Turn it off. I am not watching this anymore.
Oh, man.
But yeah, no, Ryan Couture did well. He did exactly what everybody thought was going to happen, and like you said, good for Bognosco for stepping up. If that opportunity presents itself, you take it. He didn't come out victorious, but yeah, good for Ryan Couture, and we'll see what's next for him.
I think for Bognosco, I'm hoping Bellator comes back to Michigan here, and I guarantee he's probably the first guy they call to come back on the card.
Yeah, they're like, hey, we need you to step in and fight Michael Chandler. You good with that?
Yeah, something like that. All right, next fight of the evening, not very impressive. LC Davis, former WEC fighter, he took on a newcomer in Zilton Rodriguez from Brazil. Not much to say about this fight. LC Davis has never really been a particularly exciting fighter. You can go all the way back to his WEC days. He took the fight to the ground against a guy that doesn't have a lot of wrestling, a little jiu-jitsu, and was able to hold him there for 15 minutes.
Woohoo!
That was arguably the most boring fight of the night. And I was telling friends that were around me and other people, I was like, yeah, this fight's probably going to be pretty boring. And they're like, well, this guy's like 20-6. It's pretty good. I was like, yeah, but you've never seen LC Davis fight, so I'm like, don't expect a lot, and not a lot was happening. So we're gonna kind of gloss over that fight because nothing really happened. And let's get to the fight where I think as of right now, I think we have our candidate for submission of the year in all of mixed martial arts, as Liam McGarry took on Kelly Undenson. Now, I've seen inverted triangle chokes before. I've seen triangle chokes set up for mount, and they are impressive. But what Liam McGarry did, I have never seen before, and I don't know, very few people could probably pull this particular variation of the triangle choke off, as McGarry had good striking to start very early, stuffed an early takedown, then Undenson kind of regrouped, then got to the fight to the ground. We're talking about a former All-American wrestler here, so I thought eventually he would get McGarry to the ground. And McGarry, because of his size and length, I mean, at 6'6", there are very few guys in any light heavyweight division in any organization as tall and lanky as Mr. McGarry. And you kind of saw him several times to either get a switch or get up by kind of he was in side control several times and kind of flip his legs around and go completely over the top of Undenson's body. You saw it kind of trouble times. You're like, I don't think he's going to get it. You think he's just doing it just to do it. And then all of a sudden, towards the end of the first round, in side control, mind you, just kind of starts, torquing his body over, lifting his legs over Undenson's head, is able to catch his head and then move his legs in the correct position for the triangle choke, and gets Undenson to tap just 13 seconds from the end of the round to win the Summer Series Light Heavyweight Tournament. And it looks like he'll get a shot here at Emmanuel Newton. And just a very impressive submission, for McGarry, for a guy that, his questions coming into this fight were, can he stop the takedown, and if he can't, what can he do off his back? Can he get back up, get it back to his advantageous position? But, he was able to stave off a lot of damage, and he went in there and got a submission victory. Like I said, maybe submission of the year, Dave.
Yeah, very impressive submission. Moves him to 9-0, 9 finishes. I'm very, 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 very excited for McGarry's fight against whoever the champ's going to be at the time. The couple questions that I have for McGarry are, his very first professional fight went late into the 3rd round, and then he's only had one other fight make it out of the 1st round. I want to see what happens when he gets in there with an Emmanuel Newton or whoever it's going to be. I want to see what happens when he gets into deep water. Can he take some damage, fight back from it? Because I think that this guy could make waves in the UFC at the light heavyweight division. He currently hasn't fought anybody at a very high level, but I think that he's young enough to where he could be a force to be reckoned with. Dana's going to love somebody like this. 9-0, 9 finishes. And it's not just he's not just a knockout guy. He's a knockout submission. He can do whatever you need. But I think that even if he doesn't win the belt, I think this upcoming title fight is a huge step in the career of Liam McGarry.
And the guy has a great personality. I don't know if you heard his post-fight comments or like the video leading up to the fight against Anderson. I don't know. I think this guy's a great personality. His voice is so British. Like, you could just clearly tell the British accent on him, and I just think that's fantastic. He was humble. He was talking trash, but he was actually, I thought, very respectful in defeat. He was just a big personality, and I think he's a hard guy not to like, Dave. And you add in, like you said, 9-0, 9 finishes. I think Bellator, they got a potential. This might be their next big star for their organization here.
Does he have a spot of tea, Jim?
I think he might have after he won. I don't know. I don't know.
That was an awful British accent. That sounded more like a. Yeah, it was.
Right. Oh man. All right.
Wait.
What?
I never have these ready when I could actually use them. I'm such an idiot.
That's live show, people. So that's what happens. So, well, I'm gonna get to the main event. Dave will just randomly play one of the Google effects here while I'm talking over me. And Emmanuel Newton took on Joey Beltran. And regardless of what you thought of the match, which, interesting to say, Joey Beltran gets a title shot, but he got the title shot. And to be honest, Dave, I had it 1-1 heading into the 3rd. But you could make a case that Beltran was up 2-0 and also was winning that 3rd round. He was doing a great job cutting off the cage from Newton. He was taking the center of the cage. He was really pushing, going up against Newton, not really allowing him to get a lot of range, to get a lot of power behind his punches and kicks, is really cutting off, the reach there. And I thought actually was doing a really good job. Now, he was having a little trouble hitting Newton. I thought Newton's movement while circling was good, but he was having trouble landing some of those big power shots he's capable of. And Newton, for his credit, he's a guy that's very unpredictable. He's very unorthodox. It seems that he just throws a spinning attack out of nowhere. Several times he did in the fight, mainly with kicks, but he also did with fist. And this time, I'm sure you saw the fight, but you can see the GIF too. While this fight was happening in the 3rd round, once again Joey Beltran pressuring Emmanuel Newton up against the cage. Newton's kind of angled away from the cage, and he's kind of angled. If you're audio version, I apologize, but for the video people, he's kind of angled like this. So you think if he's going to spin. I guess that'd be to the right. So when Beltran's coming around, he's thinking, all right, Newton's probably going to go to the right. But instead, Newton, with the opposite shoulder, the shoulder you can't really see, just does the opposite, turns all the way to the left, and knocks Beltran out with the spinning back fist. Something, again, you don't see coming because you don't think a guy's going to spin that way while he's already circling the opposite direction. Completely catches Beltran off guard, knocks him out cold in the 3rd round at the 3:07 marker, and once again, Emmanuel Newton catches someone with not a nail advised, but a kind of, I'm just going to throw a spinning back fist here. And Man, this is Emmanuel Newton guy. Like I said, he might have been losing the fight, but that unpredictability, that's what makes him fun to watch because you never know when this guy's gonna throw something crazy like that.
Yeah, Joey Beltran in a title shot. I just I mean honestly, like you you're going to Detroit, outside of Detroit, and this is the match that you bring. Uh, we talked about it beforehand. It doesn't make any sense to me. Um, what's crazy though is McGary's going to fight Emmanuel Newton. That's the next fight, right?
That's what it looks to be. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if you're McGary, are you thinking that you have to? I mean, you can only prepare so much for a spinning back fist, but there's no way he can try it a third time, right? In a title fight, like you kind of have to know it's there, but there's no way he throws that with the idea of he's going to knock somebody out and win the fight again. Um, I think that this title fight coming up, I didn't realize it was McGary against Newton. I think this is one of those fights that the winner of that may be one of the three faces of Bellator after this. Because if Newton can finish it again, what would that be? 3 finishes in a row for him?
I think that'd be 3 of 4 because he didn't finish Vague.
Oh, no. I'm wrong. We're both wrong. Uh, Emmanuel Newton finished Beltran, and then he had 3 decisions between the King Mo.
Oh, okay. I guess I didn't realize it was three
But
fights.
But either way, either way, I think that they can move forward with either one of these guys as the champ, and I think that they could make them one of the faces of Bellator.
Well, let's get to the UFC now. And before we do that, let's of course mention our friends at MMAforlife.ca. You can follow them on Twitter at _MMAforlife. And then the guys did a great job when Dave was at Who's Your Fight Club covering that event. Our friends at BluegrassMMA.com covering all the regional stuff here in the Midwest. So give them a follow on Twitter at BluegrassMMA. All right, Dave. Bellator is over, so we're getting to the UFC. UFC Fight Night 51 was this past Saturday. It was on the UFC Fight Pass and was broadcasting from the capital of Brazil in Brasilia. And the first fight of the night, women's bantamweight division, newcomer to the UFC, Larissa Pacheco took on Jessica Andrade. And somehow, Dave, the announcers were saying that Pacheco was favored in this fight, which I don't get at all for a girl who's never fought in the UFC against someone who's 2-1 in the organization. I don't know if that happened because Andrade clearly proved that she should have been the favorite and clearly was the better fighter. Very early in this fight, she took this thing to the ground, got great position, and eventually was able to work in a guillotine choke just as the first round was ending at the 4:33 marker. And it might have not been the highest caliber of opponent, not the highest caliber opponent she's fought so far in the UFC, Dave, but she proved that she can go out there and submit Pacheco and prove that she's a very solid fighter, and some other girls better watch out in this division. She definitely has some talent, and she's got to start fighting better fighters now. I think she's proved that she can beat the mediocre talent of this women's bantamweight division.
Yeah, kind of an unknown fight, I guess. Like it was one of those fights where not a lot of people know, but Jessica Andrade, she's one to watch. You know, like you said, mediocre talent. You don't get to play in that level anymore. Now you get to step up in competition. I think she's ready for the step up in competition. I think they brought her along. Brought her along at the right pace, and I think she's ready. So yeah. Side note: sat next to Juan from Bluegrass MMA at Hoosier Fight Club, and the pacing of the Fight Pass card. In between the fights at Hoosier Fight Club, we were watching these fights, and we got to see most of them during the intermission. So we got to watch 2 cards at once. How about that?
And also shout out that they had that good of Wi-Fi. They were able to stream it and not have any problems at Hoosier Fight Club. So big ups to them too.
Yeah. Hey, it's Beyond the Cage and Bluegrass MMA. We don't. What's the word I'm looking for here? No corners cut. We want to make sure you get the best coverage.
Well, let's get to the next fight of the evening, bantamweight division, as Yuri Alcantara took on Russell Doan. Once again, Dave, much like his previous fight against Marcus Brimage, Russell Doan didn't show much stand-up skills in his fight. Alcantara was definitely the better stand-up fighter, and the two was proving it throughout the night. I think he bloodied up and bruised Russell Doan's face pretty bad throughout this fight. And Doan was able to go in there, get some takedowns, but he didn't do much with them. Alcantara did save some time on his back. Didn't really go too hard for too many submissions, Dave, but was able to get back up to his feet and use his ever evolving stand-up skills, and really thought put his stand-up skills on a showcase in that fight. And this was very much a damage versus control fight. I think Doan did control a lot of this fight, but at the same time wasn't doing damage. And Alcantara, whenever it was on the feet, was clearly doing damage. And not a surprise at the end of the fight, Alcantara gets the victory. And for Russell Doan, he's got to work on his stand-up skills, because it just seems like he's just trying to go there and out-wrestle people. And there's a lot of strong guys in this division, a lot of good wrestlers in this bantamweight division, and a lot of good jiu-jitsu players like Alcantara. And if you're just one-dimensional, you're not going to be successful in this division, because Alcantara proved that you got to be multifaceted. And I think he showed that on Saturday night.
Yeah, one-dimensional bantamweights don't stick around the UFC for too long. Think you were pretty spot on, Jim. Alcantara moves forward with the victory, and it has to be apparent to Russell Doan that he's got to work on, or what he's got to work on. It's just a matter of, does he want to put in the effort, or is he content being in the UFC and being on the bottom end of cards and stuff like that? He's got to know what needs to be worked on. It's just a matter of, does he have the heart and desire to go in and work on it?
And real quickly for Alcantara, he's already fought one of the top guys in this division in Uriah Faber. Now he's, I believe, on a 3-fight winning streak or a 2-fight winning streak since that loss. Is it time for him to face another guy like a Uriah Faber, another top guy in this division?
Do we currently have him ranked, Jim?
I think we have him just outside the top 10 in our contenders on our new updated rankings for September, which you haven't checked out already. Give them a look at facebook.com/Beyond the Cage podcast monthly rankings in the notes section. But we have so I guess technically we'd have him like 12 or 13 in the world, somewhere around there.
I'm gonna look. I'm gonna make this. Ooh, wow. We must have terrible rankings, Jim. Have you seen the UFC's awful rankings? Alcantara's ranked 7th.
Yeah, well, he's ranked 7th in the UFC because we have guys like Marlon Moraes, Bibiano Fernandez, and Eduardo Dantes, all, to me, are top guys. So, in the UFC, yeah, he'd be 7 because those 3 guys are out. So he would take the place of where those 3 guys should be.
What do you think about Bruce Leroy and Alcantara, with the winner taking that big step into the top 5, 6, 7?
If Bruce Leroy can win this weekend in Japan, absolutely. I think most definitely. If not, maybe I know this guy would probably be coming off a loss, but I wouldn't even be mad the loser of the Cruz Mizugaki fight, or maybe even the loser of Rafael Asunciao is fighting Brian Caraway coming up as well. I would like maybe the loser of that.
No, because you have to figure this out, Jim. Asunciao is going to murder Caraway, and then Caraway is going to have to recover. Him and Misha are both going to have to recover after losses, and then Eddie Wineland wants Caraway in like June, so Caraway's out.
Well, I'm just throwing out some potential names. There's probably even and maybe when Michael McDonald returns, I think would be also a solid fight too.
Where's he been?
He's been hurt, if I'm not mistaken. So if he can come back, I think would be a nice fight for him to come back.
It's not a bad one. I like that.
So, all right. Well, let's get on to the next fight of the evening in the welterweight division, as Santiago Ponzinibbio took on newcomer to the UFC, Wendell Oliveira. And this fight, Dave, we got to see what made Santiago so exciting on the Ultimate Fighter Brazil, his stand-up game. We got to see that in this fight against Oliveira. Again, a guy making his newcomer maybe not the best talent, but Ponzinibbio showed his stand-up skills, showed why he got that shot against Ryan LaFleur, shot to come into the UFC. And those are the type of guys that we need to see kind of Ponzinibbio take to kind of showcase his skills, build a little confidence in him, because he's not at the level of wrestling and grappling like somebody like a Ryan LaFleur. And that's not to say he can't be a good grappler or use wrestling in reverse or anything, but at this stage, I think he is a guy that has some talent. He comes from Argentina. They can kind of build up the hype of MMA in Argentina since it's already big in Brazil. And he's a nice guy. I hope they can kind of build along, but they need to feed him a couple strikers here, and then maybe someone more like a Ryan LaFleur to see if he has evolved.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It wasn't the highest level of competition with Oliveira, like you said, making his debut, but Ponzinibbio took care of business, and yeah, he'll get a little stiffer competition in this next one. Yeah, that's about it. Go in there, take care of business, be done. You're healthy. You can take a fight again. So, yeah. Hey, before you get to these two decisions, remember we were talking before that we were curious as to why the Santos-Escudero fight was on the main card?
Yes.
You mentioned maybe we should put the Hanayaya Johnny Bedford fight.
Yes.
See how that ended?
With Hanayaya getting a submission victory in the second round.
Yeah, a finish in the second round, a submission.
So
I saw that and I was like, Jim, you should work for the UFC.
I'm just saying, I had a feeling it was either going to be a submission by Yaya or a knockout by Bedford.
Yep. I remember I was watching it at HFC and I was like, oh, I hope we saw that.
Oh, man. Well, the next fight, yeah, as you said, was a decision, Dave, as two former Ultimate Fighter winners, as you look at. You had Ultimate Fighter Brazil winner and Ultimate Fighter regular American version, Efrain Escudero, making his third appearance, or third stint in the octagon, taking on Leonardo Santos. And I had to really overpronounce because I always thought it was Efrain Escudero, but John Aiken really was going Efrain. I was like, I don't think that's how you say it. Anyways, I digress here. His stand-up looked much improved from the last time I seen him fight, which, if you've seen any of his previous stints, primarily a wrestler guy, I think was a junior college national champion or something like that. Very much a wrestler. Showed improved stand-up, but Santos, he showed improved ground game. When he fought Norman Park, Dave, another Ultimate Fighter winner, his grappling, yeah, he stopped the takedown, but he was getting dominated in the clinch. And I thought taking on a wrestler-based guy like Escudero, I thought, yeah, that maybe doesn't look good because I didn't think he had a great performance against Norman Park. But in this fight, his grappling looked much improved. He was able to take down Escudero. He was able to hold him there. He did some damage. And Escudero, for a guy you would think have better wrestling on paper, Dave, didn't look very good. I mean, his stand-up was improved, so I guess he improved in that category. I don't know if he digressed in his wrestling, but he might have not been prepared for the wrestling of Santos, but I got to credit Santos because this was a much better performance than his last fight against Norman Park.
Yeah, we saw bits and pieces of this fight, but did it look like Escudero? What's the word I want to use? Oh man, I don't know how I want to describe Escudero. This is why we do live shows, so you can see me. You can see the gears turning. I digress. I don't remember. I was going to make a comment about Escudero, but no, strong work for Santos defeating Escudero. It may be a decision. It may not be the most exciting fight that you've ever seen, but still on the record, that looks like a strong victory. I guess I'll ask you a question. Does Escudero stay in the UFC?
I think he may get one more fight, and then he gets cut again if he loses.
If he comes back, is he the greatest Ultimate Fighter ever? To come back 4 times.
I think he'd be the first person to come back. I think 3 is the most I've seen. I think Josh Neer's done 3. I think a small other handful has come back 3 times,
Well,
but I don't think anyone's come back 4.
well, Nick and Nate Diaz have both retired like 87 times. So does that count?
Maybe. No, but Escudero, it's not like he got completely dominated or Santos did anything completely amazing. I would say Santos probably won rounds 1 and 3. You can make a case that he won all 3 rounds, but I just think it was a bad. Again, we talked about maybe in the Tisha Torres round of Marcos fight. I think Escudero may be underestimating Santos a little bit. Wasn't really thinking, oh, this guy's going to go out there and be able to out wrestle me, and that's what he did. And even though he's fought in the UFC before, this was his first time in quite a number of years. So he still could get nerves. I mean, it's still like,
Yeah.
oh, I gotta come back and have a good debut, and maybe he was just overthinking it. But who? Yeah, like I said, I think he gets one more chance here, and if it's not a victory, he's probably cut loose for good for the UFC.
Ironically, Efron Escudero is 0-2 in Brazil in his life. Only lost 9 times, 2 of which are in Brazil. There's a fun fact for you.
Well, the next fight of the evening was Gleison Tpau against Peter Hallman, and this was a very close fight. I think early on, Tpau was trying to be aggressive, something he's not always known for, was really trying to be aggressive, and I think it showed in that first round. I think he caught Hallman off guard with his aggressiveness, especially with the stand-up game. I thought won that round. The second round was very close. I thought Tpau used a little more of that aggressiveness entering the round. I think Hallman then started to kind of figure it out a little bit and was starting to realize, all right, if he comes aggressive, I can tie him up. He may be a little stronger than me, but if I can get him tied up, maybe I can use some good positioning and get some damage that way. And I think he did that a little bit and then kind of broke out a little bit with his stand-up game towards the end of the round. And I think that carried into the third round where I think he was the fresher fighter and saw that Tpau, once again, classic Tpau fade, Dave, into the third round, was starting to fade into the third round. I really thought Hallman did a good job and won that third round. The question mark was how you were going to score that second round. Honestly, I thought that this fight could have been a draw. I think you very easily could have scored that second round a 9-9 because neither guy did anything tremendously amazing to really stick out and go, that guy won that round. So right. I thought Tpau was probably going to get the nod there. I was thinking either draw or Tpau wins. I was like, I don't think Hallman is going to get the win. I just had a feeling somehow he just wasn't. The judges weren't going to give him that second round, and it ended up coming down a split decision because it was a close fight, and Tpau gets the victory. And once again, another decision victory for Gleison Tpau, and this guy wins. I mean, he's won enough to stick around in the UFC, but once again, not getting finishes. He's fading. It's just they mention how many times he's fought in the UFC. It's when you really look back and think and look over his record, Dave. It's amazing he's been in the UFC this long with lack of finishes, and being on the undercard almost his whole entire career. It's amazing that this guy, he could maybe end up breaking somebody's record for most ever fights in the UFC and never get ever close to a title shot. It's crazy to think that.
Is Gleison Tpau the guy that, like, he's a middleweight, like welterweight? Isn't he the guy that looks like he could fight at like 205? He looks like a truck, right?
Yeah, I think he cuts from he starts his camp at 200 pounds. He cuts a ridiculous amount of weight to make 155 pounds.
Yeah, he's a guy that when you watch the weigh-in, I didn't see the weigh-ins this week, but when you see the weigh-ins, you're like, wait, that fight's at welterweight? That guy looks like a house. No.
Yeah, I don't know how he gets down to 155.
No.
But But here's the thing, though. He may cut a lot of weight, but weight's never been an issue. I don't think he's ever missed weight, or if he has, it's not like a John Lineker situation.
Yeah. I'm looking back at all of his fights, and his fight against Josh Neer in 2009 was at a catchweight, and his fight against Jeremy Stevens in 2009 was at a catchweight. I don't know on which end. But of all these fights that he's had in the UFC, those are the only ones. You brought up a really good point. He's been around forever, but he's never really made that step up. He's had some okay winning streaks. We talked about it before. 4 wins, 2 wins, 2 wins, 3 wins, but then they sprinkle in those losses. And, I think that he's been okay in his fights. He wins. But when he gets to that level, like he beat John Cholis, Jamie Varner, and then he fought Michael Johnson and got beat, but then he goes and he wins 2 more. So if he beats Michael Johnson in that fight, he puts himself into a position where he can fight for that top 10, top 12 spot. But when you win 2, lose 1, win 2, lose 1, all you're really doing is going to continue to get paychecks from the UFC, and you're really not going to move up in the rankings or on the cards or anything like that.
Well, let's get to the main event of the evening in the heavyweight division as Andrei Arlovski took on Antonio Bigfoot Silva. And Dave, we did see a different Andrei Arlovski. We saw a more classic Andrei Arlovski. We saw a guy using his great hand speed, head movement, pretty solid footwork, was able to get in and out, avoid the power shots of Bigfoot Silva, and then when the opportunity presented itself, landed a huge straight right to the head of Antonio Bigfoot Silva that sent the big man crashing to the canvas. He threw a couple more that somehow, Dave, knocked out that huge gargantuan football helmet size head of Antonio Bigfoot Silva in the first round at the 259 marker. And what I don't think it's an upset that he won, Dave. I think it's an upset in the way he won against Bigfoot Silva so early. And we said we needed to see an improved Andrei Arlovski. We couldn't see the guy that fought Brendan Schaub. We didn't see that guy, and lo and behold, Andrei Arlovski gets another win in the UFC.
Yep, down goes Bigfoot. Good win for Arlovski. Tonight it's good to see him back. I'm very impressed with the knockout. Very impressed with the victory. Very impressed that he's able to come back after the time away. From what Dana White says, always been a pleasure to work with. Always been a man. If he's got a problem, he talks to Dana about it. Whatever. All that stuff is great. I still don't think Arlovski is able to move into the top 10, top 5 at all. Maybe the top 10, but the top 5. I don't think Arlovski has anything for the top of that division, but it's a very neat story.
Real quick, I would like to see him rematch Ben Rothwell next because of Rothwell's victory over Overeem.
Hey, how about this? So, as everybody knows, I started watching the UFC and MMA around UFC 112. So, I was clicking around. And I went on Wikipedia, and I found out that Arlovski and Silva, this is a rematch, clear. I knew that. But the event that they fought at was called Strikeforce Heavy Artillery, which brought up 2 points. One, I love the name, and they should do that with the UFC instead of having Fight Night. Heavy Artillery, that's awesome. I love it.
Well, they used to have the names a lot frequently. If you really look at a lot of the older events, they almost always used to have some type of tagline or name to it. And then right around when UFC 100, UFC 112, kind of right around when you said you started watching, they started really dropping those names and really promoting. Like, if you see the poster behind me, it's not UFC 164 Heavy Artillery or whatever the case may be. It's just UFC 164 Henderson versus Pettis. And they really tried to promote the fighters' names more than the event name, and that's kind of the decision they have made. Now, for these Fight Night Daves, I think they could come up with some more clever names, because we're starting to get now UFC Fight Night 52 or Bigfoot Silva 2. I would like to see maybe names for the Fight Nights.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much the pay-per-view, because people know UFC 164 and that poster, or what's coming up, UFC 170. I think they realize that that's the pay-per-views. And so maybe the names thing can kind of make a comeback for these Fight Nights, because some of these Fight Nights they're calling like UFC Fight Night Brasilia or UFC Fight Night Cincinnati or UFC Fight Night Albuquerque. But eventually, if they return to those cities, they're not going to call it UFC Fight Night Albuquerque again. You know what I mean? They're not going to then call it UFC Fight Night Albuquerque 2 when it's really UFC Fight Night 65. You know what I mean? Like, I think maybe for these Fight Nights, maybe they could do that. But
hey, just real quick on that Heavy Artillery card, the main event was Overeem defeating Brett Rogers, Arlovski defeating Bigfoot Silva, Jacare, Hodger Gracie are on the main card. Second fight of the night, at welterweight, Michael Chandler defeats Sal Woods. How about that? There's a fun fact for you.
I bet Strikeforce is wishing they still had Strikeforce. Well, Strikeforce then being bought up by the UFC probably wish they had Michael Chandler. How about that?
Yeah.
All right, let's.
What happens when you click on Wikipedia and then you click on something else?
Yeah, and then
And
you
then,
lose the original page you were on that you wanted to go back to. Like, son of a. All right, well, before we get to the next Fight Night 52 from Japan, once again on the UFC Fight Pass, let's do a quick preview here, Dave. Bellator 125, the first fight of this season, no title fight. Eventually that was going to happen, but I think we're going to see a fun card as we get Rafael Butler back in the heavyweight division. He will be taking on a newcomer in Javi Alilia. So I've seen Butler fight before. He's a pretty aggressive guy. That should be a fun fight. We get to see Brian Rogers return. He's always exciting. He's taking on Rafael Carvalho. And if I'm not mistaken, I thought those two had fought before. I could be wrong on that, but Brian Rogers, I don't think I've seen a boring Brian Rogers fight. So that should be fun. And then we get the main event. Former kickboxer, Pride, and Dream Fighter Melvin Manhoef will make his Bellator debut, and he's taking on, again, a guy that I don't think is ever in a boring fight, win or lose, Mr. Doug Marshall. And that should just be an absolute brawl between those two. That should be fun. That's going to be a lot of damage, a lot of haymakers thrown in that fight, and somebody's going to get brutally hurt in that main event. Now, like I said, this might not be the biggest names or maybe the most well-known guys, but I actually think we're going to see a very entertaining card for Bellator 125 from Fresno.
yeah, it feels like a card that would be a good kickoff card. You got a lot of guys that are going to go for finishes. This could have been a decent one to throw as the relaunch of Bellator, but there's a lot of fun fights on this card. I'm looking forward to the Marshall Manhoef fight myself. Doug Marshall doesn't have a boring fight, like you said, so yeah, I'll definitely be tuning in. I might even actually watch it live as it happens on Spike TV this week.
Well, let's not get crazy here. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. All right, let's
There
get
went our
to
credentials for Bellator.
Yeah, that's right. All right, let's get... Yeah, I'm kidding. All right, UFC Fight Night 52 from the Satayama Super Arena in the land of the rising sun, Japan. 6 fights on the main card for the UFC Fight Pass. The first fight of the evening, and this is I think it's Kunimoto against Richard Walsh. I think that's what I have listed. Is that what you have listed, Dave? They kind of have the order all crazy topsy-turvy here on the fight, but I know that fight's on this card here.
No.
Am I wrong on that?
It's Horiguchi versus Reyes.
Okay, then the second fight's okay. So it's Kyoji Horiguchi against John Reyes. Now, looking at Horiguchi, 13-1 in his career. 8 of his 13 career victories are by knockout. He is 2-0 in the UFC, 2-fight winning streak. His last fight, very impressive victory as he took out the Mongoose, Daryl Montague, at UFC Fight Night Cincinnati back in May. Again, this fight, I believe, in the flyweight division, or is it in the bantamweight division?
This is a flyweight.
I thought so. All right. For some reason, they have Horiguchi still listed at bantamweight, but I thought it was a flyweight. Anyways, John Reyes, 7-3 in his career, 4 of his 7 career victories by submission, 0-1 in the UFC. His last loss was a armbar loss to Dustin Kimura. Damn, it would have been better if it was a Kimura loss to Dustin Kimura. But
what if it was a Kimura loss to Dustin armbar?
It could be. I don't know. Probably less likely, but fun fact there on Reyes, he actually lost to Russell Doan. Get this event. It was called 808 Battleground Dropping Jaws.
Wow. Look, watch.
Talk about a name for an event. Dropping Jaws.
Watch this. See how that happened?
That should be the next UFC Fight Night. UFC Fight Night 53, Dropping Jaws. All right. Anyways, Reyes against Horiguchi. Obviously, Horiguchi, he has a lot of knockouts, just one submission victory to his credit, but a guy that does have some ground game, can do some ground and pound, has some nasty stand-up, and I think for Reyes, I think you want to try to close the distance, get this fight up close and not let Horiguchi use his speed and great striking skills. Because I think Montague, he was kind of blitzkrieg there by Horiguchi. He was definitely not expecting that. And if you're Reyes, I just don't think you want to tempt fate there. I really, maybe a brief standing out period, but I think you got in close to this guy and try to wear him down and wrestle him that way. Because as of right now, from the limited stuff we have seen of Horiguchi, Dave, very impressive stand-up.
Yeah. You think Reyes needs to try to push him against the cage and not allow Horiguchi to move and strike? I mean, he's got to dirty it up, right?
Absolutely. You got to. I mean, plus you're going to have a little bit. They're both listed at 5'5", but believe it or not, I thought Horiguchi. It's hard to say he's a small flyweight, but I think Reyes is probably a little bigger too.
That's like the main event. Like those guys are big heavyweights.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well. Yeah. You know what I think that's the best strategy. I don't think you want to get into a kickboxing match with Horiguchi.
True. Hey, as we move on to the next fight, I have 2 pieces of breaking news when we're done. So remind me, and I will drop your jaw.
All right. Well, the next fight of the evening is Kichi Kunimoto, as he will take on Richard Walsh. Looking at Richard Walsh, he was on the Ultimate Fighter Australia versus Canada this past season. 8-1 in his career, 4 of 8 victories by knockout. He is from Australia, in case you're wondering. He was on Team Australia. 1-0 in his career in the UFC as he took out Chris Idich at the Ultimate Fighter TUF Canada versus Australia finale there back in April. And looking at Kunimoto, 17-5, also has 2 draws to his credit. 9 of his 17 career victories are by submission. He is actually 2-0 in the UFC, and he had a very impressive victory in his last fight, Dave, as he was able to take out Daniel Sarafian at UFC 174, submitting him in the first round. So this is a guy who has a very good ground game, a guy that can get on you in a hurry. He's a pretty solid welterweight, and size, so is Richard Walsh. I think both guys are pretty big for the class. And I think for Walsh, got to keep your distance, cannot let Kunimoto get up on top of you. And, I think taking out a guy like Sarafian in the submission is very impressive. So I don't think you want to get yourself into a position where Kunimoto can get you with any type of choke. You want to keep your distance in this fight, and maybe you can get a knockout. Now, Kunimoto, we haven't really seen a lot of his stand-up skills yet, so it's hard to say he's completely bad in that area, and I think he probably can stand with Richard Walsh, but I think if he can get this fight to the ground, he has a serious advantage over the Aussie.
Yeah, getting it to the ground may be a problem. If you look on UFC.com, the Walsh has defended 100% of the takedowns. I don't know if that's 1 or 1,000 in his last fight.
Well, I mean, it's one fight, and yeah, it did go all 3 rounds, but I mean,
right. So this is a fight. I think that you could say it's kind of a, maybe I'm not saying this right. It's a kind of like a watershed moment here where both guys are coming in. They've had their first fights. They've been in the bright lights. This is their first time on the main card. And one of these guys is going to take a step forward, and then one of these guys is going to have to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, and coincidentally, as I said, Kunimoto's last victory, rear naked choke victory. Richard Walsh's only career loss was by rear naked choke.
There you go.
Back for you. All right,
before you get into
the
this
welterweight division, by the way, if I didn't mention that. But yes, go ahead, Dave.
Look at UFC.com. Look. Hold on. Let me see if I can show this.
Why is this fight on the main card?
No. What is she wearing?
I have no idea.
Can you see it?
Yeah. Get to that fight. I have no idea what that is.
Wow.
She's not going to fight in that, is she?
Is that legal? Is that armor?
I mean, we're in Japan. Who knows? They got a different set of rules, I think, maybe. All right. Let's get to the next fight of the evening, which will be, I believe
That
that's
one.
is it? Okay, I
According
had
to
another. It doesn't matter. My order's all screwed up here. I guess I'm looking at the wrong sheet. Anyways, let's get to that fight. Rin Naki or Nakai will take on Misha Tate. Now, Nakai is undefeated in her career, 16-0, just one draw. That's really the only blemish in her career. She'll be fighting in her home country of Japan, making her UFC debut against former Strikeforce women's bantamweight champion Misha Tate, who is coming off her first victory since 2012, where she defeated Julie Kenzie back in Strikeforce, as she defeated Liz Carmouche at UFC on Fox 11 earlier this year. Misha Tate, 6 of her 14 career victories are by submission, and looking at her opponent Naka, 6 decision victories out of 16. She also does have 10 finishes on her career, 4 knockouts and 6 submissions. So while Nakai is talented, she hasn't fought over here in the UFC yet, but she has taken on some competition, Dave. Actually, she in her last 2 fights, she defeated Tara La Rosa in September of last year and also defeated Sarah D'Elio earlier this year in May. So she has taken on some names that we have seen before. Primarily, obviously, most of her career she has taken on ladies from Japan. So this is a huge, I mean, don't get me wrong, Sarah D'Elio and Tara DeRosa are solid competitors, but this is a huge step up in competition for taking on Misha Tate. Now, I know you don't like Misha Tate, Dave, but she is a talented girl in this division, and Nakai has got her work cut out for her. Obviously, Misha Tate has much improving stand-up, solid takedowns, good ground and pound, maybe sometimes is a little over-aggressive, leave herself some openings, maybe not the greatest submission, we've seen her get submitted before. So if you're Nakai, I think you got to wait and sit back and wait for openings to present itself. You got to wait to counter. But you got to counter at the right moment, because Tate can be aggressive. She can kind of bully you a little bit there with the wrestling, and if you can't take advantage of the openings against her, more times than not, she seems to get the victory.
Yeah, Misha Tate's probably the higher skilled of the two. It's pretty hard to argue. I'm not a huge fan of her. Misha Tate has to be the most delusional female fighter on earth. I'm reading right here on MMAJunkie.com. The headline says, Misha Tate hopes to rematch Kat Zingano next if title shot is off the table. You just went over what she's done in the last year. This woman thinks if she beats somebody that nobody who watches the UFC knows, on not even the co-main event of a card on the computer, that she should get a title shot against the best women's fighter on the planet. And if not, she should get a fight against the #1 contender, even though she doesn't earn it. Like I said, that woman's delusional. She needs to win about 4 fights before she's back in the mix for a title fight. And beating this young lady this weekend is a step in the right direction. But let's not get too crazy, Jim. She's got her work cut out for her if she ever wants to get back to Ronda or to Kat's level.
Well, she has to get a win here to even be in the conversation.
Jim, she could get cut if she loses.
I don't know about that.
Why would she not get cut if she loses? Other than because she's pretty, sorta.
I think that a lot of people are fans of her.
A lot of people are fans of lots of people. I couldn't think of one.
All right. Well, speaking of being fans and being good-looking, Yoshihiro Akiyama, better known as Sexyama, makes his return to the UFC, and he will be taking on former Ultimate Fighter winner Amir Sadala. Now, for Akiyama, he has not fought for the UFC since February 2012, and before that, Dave, he was on a 4-fight losing streak, but he lost to some of the best in 2 different divisions, as his losses were to Chris Lieben, Michael Bisping, Vitor Belfort and Jake Shields. Now, in the Lieben and the Shields fight, you could maybe make a case that he should have won or was winning the fight definitely against Chris Lieben. So he very easily could have been 2-2 in that span, but kind of has took some time off. I believe he had some injury problems, and he's set to return to the UFC. And this is a guy that, very good striker, a guy that is very tough to take down. He's a black belt in judo and is a very strong individual, especially here in this welterweight weight class. And I think if you're Mir Sadala, you got to move. You got to have a lot of movement and headwork, because if you stand in front and brawl in the pocket with Akiyama, that's not a good idea. And taking him down, Jake Shields took down Dan Henderson pretty much at will for 25 minutes, right? Jake Shields could not take down Akiyama in their fight, was over in that fight. So I find it hard to believe Amir Sadala is going to be able to take down Akiyama. I just don't see that happening. So it's to me, it's going to play out on the feet, and whether or not Samir Sadala can avoid the brawl. If he can do that, I think he can win, because he does have very technical stand-up, Dave. But if he gets into the brawl, lets Akiyama pressure him, get him, his back up against the cage, Akiyama could very easily get a knockout victory in his return to the organization.
You know why Sexyama doesn't like fights up against the cage? Because he's too sexy for that. He doesn't want to be. He doesn't want to.
I mean, yeah, that's true. I mean, that's actually the argument for everything in his case. And to be honest, how come his face just isn't the poster for this event? I mean, we got to see these two big white dudes and Mark Hunt and Roy Nelson. Why don't they just put Sexyama on there? We get what's going on.
UFC Fight Night 52. ...
The return of Sexyama.
The best part of Yoshihiro Akiyama's fights are the walkout.
That's true, and this should be extra special with him doing it in Japan.
Yeah, there's probably going to be paramedics everywhere, because all the women and most of the men will probably be fainting as his sexiness walks out.
I might have to shield my. I might have to take off my glasses so I don't get distracted by his sexiness walking out to the cage. You know what I mean? That's how much it may distract me from watching. So,
yeah, I can't. It's hard to even break down the fight.
It's hard to, because I mean, just by sheer sexiness, he wins every fight. So It's really hard to say someone else is actually going to beat him. It's hard. It's hard to get a rational thought going on.
After 3 rounds of action, let's go to the judges' scorecards for a decision. All 3 judges scored this contest sexy, sexy, sexy.
I'll judge score Sexyama's looks 10, 10, and 10, winning by unanimous decision.
All
right,
boy.
we're getting ahead of ourselves here. No, like seeing Akiyama fight, but Dave, I guess a more technical breakdown is. I'm sure people are tired of our silliness here.
Yeah, I don't really have much. I'm all sexied out right now. Hold on a second. Steve Sadler is watching live. The president, CEO, and secretary at VigilanteMMA.com. I sent him a text and I said, "Hey, we're talking about Sexyama." I said, "Call and talk about him." He goes, "Oh, he called?" I said, No. He told me I need to work on my punctuation. But he said, Sexyama is the Ryan Gosling of the UFC.
Oh, man. That's a pretty good comparison. I can dig it.
There's my breakdown.
All right, well, let's get to the next fight of the evening, which is the co-main event. Former Pride champion Takanori Gomi will take on former Ultimate Fighter contestant Miles Jury. Looking at Gomi, he is coming off a victory over Isaac Valley Flag at UFC 172. He has won 3 out of his last 4 fights, and realistically, Dave, you could say he's won his last 4 fights, as I thought he beat Diego Sanchez back in March of last year. But Gomi, 35-9 in his career. Believe it or not, actually has more decisions than knockouts. 16 of his 35 career victories are by decision. He still has 13 knockout. Looking at Miles Jury, undefeated in his career, 14-0, has done nothing but win since entering the UFC, 5-0 in the organization. Arguably the biggest win of his career came in his last fight against Diego Sanchez at UFC 171. Of his 14 career victories, 6 are by knockout. Now, what has made Miles Jury so successful, Dave? I think he's had good conditioning, good work ethic, and he's done a good job of using his strikes to set up his takedowns. And against Gomi, he's going to have to try to get this fight to the ground. Now, I don't think Jury will get completely outclassed on the feet by Takanori Gomi, but Gomi is a guy that I think, you saw in his last fight against Isaac Valley Flag, can still throw hard, and can still take punishment. And this is a guy I just don't want to tempt fate. Don't give Gomi his best chance to win. And you got to keep the pressure up. You got to try to get in Gomi's face and get the takedown. If you sit back or exchange with this guy in the pocket, he can still knock you out, and he can still knock out a lot of people out in this division. You add in the added bonus, he's fighting at home in Japan. Jury had to fly all the way from California to get this fight. I think Gomi were ready to go, and last fight was a big test for Miles Jury taking on Diego Sanchez. Don't get me wrong, but I think I shouldn't say this is a huge step up, but I think where he's taking on Gomi, what Gomi has done in the sport, I think this is a huge test for Miles Jury. And if he gets by Takanori Gomi, he's on a very short list, for title contenders. He puts himself right in that position because, Gomi may not have the rank he once did, but his name still carries a lot of prestige if you're able to beat him. Yeah, this is
every step along the way for Miles Jury has been a test. And so far so good. He's answered every test that he's had. And I completely agree. Location and all that kind of stuff. Gomi doesn't, he's not the guy that he used to be, but he's still Takanori Gomi. So, big time deal for Miles Jury. And yeah, who would have thought when Miles Jury broke into the UFC that he would literally be 1, maybe 2 fights away from getting at least in the title shot talk, if not actual title shot contention.
Yeah, and you got to add in the fact he's so far probably been the best fighter of that season of The Ultimate Fighter. I mean, Michael Chiesa has done good. So has Iaquinta, Darren Cruikshank. There's some other guys from that season that are still in the UFC, but none have been able to do what Miles Jury have done. And he was the guy that I don't think it made it past the quarterfinal round of the show.
Right. Hey,
it's incredible to think that. So he's definitely improved leaps and bounds since that time.
Hey, Steve Sadler just sent me an email in regards to our talk about the poster at Fight Night 52. Remember we were talking about that?
Yes, right. The return of Sexyama.
Yeah. How does this look?
That's really all they needed to put on it. It could have just been black, white lettering. He said the return of Sexyama and his face right there. That's it.
They would have to put. They can't put his picture on the poster. They'd have to put NC-17 on it.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, I gotcha. Or maybe just his eyes.
Yeah.
Like cover up the rest of the.
And Steve also wanted to point out that along with what you were thinking, that Sexyama never loses a decision because everybody knows he's a 10.
That's true. Very, very hard to be. All right, main event of the evening, Mark Hunt against Big Country. Well, there's not a huge technical breakdown in this fight, Dave, because it's just 2 big guys in the octagon, and they're just going to be swinging as hard as they can. One of them will land on the canvas unconscious, and the other will get their hand raised victorious. That's pretty much how I see this one playing out. There's no way it goes 25 minutes. Heck, if this was a 3-round fight, Dave, I don't even think it would go 15 minutes. I'm thinking maybe middle of the second round. These guys throw too hard for them to last that long. I just don't think it's possible there. That's pretty much my breakdown. That's probably easy. I think it's going to be fun. It's a great main event. Mark Hunt's had a lot of time in Japan. I think Roy Nelson has fought there before as well. I could be mistaken on that, but I think it's a great main event. I would like to see it on Fox Sports 1. I know it's on the Fight Pass, but I just think this is a solid card overall, and I think a really good card for the UFC to bring to Japan. I think it should be a fun night, and this will cap off, I think, what will be a great night of fights.
Yeah.
That's what you got?
Yeah. That's. I mean, it's a fun fight. I don't think either one of those guys wins the belt anytime soon, but it's definitely one to tune in. Someone's gonna lay across the canvas, and yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Is it? It's not much more of a technical breakdown than that.
Well, before we get to picks, Dave, I want to mention that if you haven't heard it already, it was on last week's show, and it is already on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Beyond the Cage podcast. I got a chance to talk to Johnny Case, who will be fighting on the undercard of this event, UFC Fight Night 52, as he will be making his UFC debut against Kazuki Tukadome. And so listen to that interview, and really looking forward to Johnny's fight on the undercard. So check that out if you haven't already. So with that said, Dave, let's get to picks.
Ooh, hold on.
All right, the first fight of the evening is Kyoji Horiguchi against John Reyes. I really liked Horiguchi in his last fight against Daryl Montague, and I think his role continues here in the UFC, so give me Horiguchi to win.
Yep, I will go with Horiguchi as well, my friend.
Kichi Kunimoto against Richard Walsh. I think beating Daniel Sarafian was awfully impressive, and that's not to say Richard Walsh can't win, but I like the momentum Kunimoto brings into this fight, so I'll take him for the victory over Walsh.
Yeah, I'm going to take not Richard Walsh.
Miesha Tate against Rin Nakai or Naki at women's bantamweight. Nakai looks like she's really talented, Dave. Again, undefeated in her career of 17 fights, 16 wins, just one draw, but she's never faced somebody the caliber of a Miesha Tate, so I'm going to go with Miesha Tate to win. You got to pick somebody, Dave.
I am not a huge Miesha Tate fan, so I'm going to go with Nakai. I think Miesha wins, but for the record, I want Nakai to win.
The next fight of the evening, Yoshihiro Akiyama against Amir Sadala. I think by our discussion about this fight, I think you realize who we're picking, and it's Sexyama 1,000 times over. It really doesn't even matter who he's fighting. I'm probably just picking him automatically.
Yeah.
There we go. Next fight of the evening, Takanori Gomi against Miles Jury for the co-main event of the evening. This is a really tough fight. I do like both guys. Of course, Miles Jury grew up not too far from me here in the Metro Detroit area. I'm picking Miles Jury. I don't know if it's technically an upset. I don't know if he's favored, but to beat Gomi in his home country, I think is a big deal. And I think Miles Jury, he seems to stick to his game plan, Dave, so I have a hard time thinking he's going to deviate from that. So I'm going to go with Miles Jury in this one. Yeah,
I think that I'm going to continue to agree with you on everything and go with Miles Jury. He's on a roll. Gomi's been around for a long time. I just think it's time for Miles Jury.
Main event of the evening, Mark Hunt against Roy Nelson. You heard our breakdown. It was simple, it was short, and it was sweet. And I think the last man standing, after all these gargantuan blows are thrown, Dave, I think it's going to be Big Country. The guy has fought some of the heaviest hitters in the division and has not been knocked out yet. And that's not to say Mark Hunt can't do it, but more times than not, Big Country finds a way to stick around and not get finished, Dave. So I'm going to go with Big Country.
Yeah, the only reason I'm going to go with Hunt is because somebody's going to get knocked out, and I just don't know. So I'm going to go with Hunt.
It really is a pick'em fight. Yeah, it's a pick'em fight. Well, we already said some shout-outs before earlier, but we'll thank them again. Vigilante MMA, MMAforlife.ca, MMAinsider.net, Bluegrass MMA. Of course, our friends at TopRatedMMA.com. Check out and buy some of their gear at TopRatedMMA.com. Our great friends at MMASignaturesUSA.com. Definitely go on there, get some great deals, get your items authenticated by them. If you want your stuff to be legit and say, hey, this is certified, he's running some great specials on his certification progress, which he just launched. So check it out for all your memorabilia needs. And, of course, we got to thank our great friends at Fight Chicks for sponsoring the show. Any final thoughts, Dave?
I had one to go back to the TUF 20 that we talked about. On Twitter, Jason Floyd, you can follow him at Jason_Floyd. It says, per Fox Sports, TUF 20 on Fox Sunday. I guess they showed it on main Fox.
Yes, I heard they did, yes.
It says that has 1.735 million viewers. The show drew 831,000 in +3 DVR numbers.
Yep, that means in the 3 days since the event plus the DVR numbers. But the
Right.
actual live was the 536. The day, then day plus it bumps it up to 800, and then they re-showed it on regular Fox to 1.7 million. So eventually it got good ratings, but the actual live 10 to midnight broadcast wasn't as well received. But if they can get ratings that way through other means, then that's all that matters, as long as people are watching their product.
Yeah, I don't think they care. And one last thing, I'm going to 178 next week, and we're going to break it down. Ariel just tweeted while we were talking, Jim, that Mighty Mouse has been tested for the second time, blood and urine, this morning. That's the second time probably within 3 weeks that he's been tested. I love it.
All right, well, he is the Juice, Dave Sadler. Follow him on Twitter at VigilanteJuice. I'm your host, Jim Graham. Follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. All right, thanks everybody for listening this week once again. And a quick shout out, as noted on our Facebook page, we're going to be doing a series of interviews for RFA 19, as 5 of the main card fighters will be stopping by Beyond the Cage to chat with us about their fight at RFA 19. All the interviews will be individually released on YouTube, and then closer to the fight on October 10th, we're going to do one huge special bonus episode that we'll throw on our Stitcher page and iTunes page. That will be all 5 interviews back to back to back and all that, so you can hear what they have to say. And we're very excited that we were able to get this opportunity to interview some of these guys on RFA, and hope they do well, and hopefully they make it big, because RFA seems to be the big organization feeding the UFC as of lately. A lot of guys from the RFA are moving in, so great to have that opportunity. So for the Juice, Dave Sadler, I'm your host, Jim Graham. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast presented by Fight Chicks.